We were all in. My wife and I, we said, we're doing this. We're moving our whole family to New Zealand, and we're gonna commit to the fellowship. We're gonna help other fellows. We're gonna make positive impact in whatever way we can make it. And when COVID happened, our circumstance was particularly bad. We had sold our house and put all of our belongings in a shipping container. Before we could actually get on the plane to come to New Zealand, the border was closed. And we spent 18 months working with Immigration New Zealand and EHF to try to get a border exemption. And look, we understand, there were lots of Kiwis that couldn't get into their own country, so it didn't really make sense to let us in. We persevered. It took us almost 5 years to get here.
It's an amazing demonstration of resilience though, right?
I've reflected on that a bit, and I hope, for example, my children see it that way, right? We had a dream. We fell in love with the country. We've kept it in our sights and haven't given up yet. We're still here.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Wealth. Today I am joined by Leonard. Leonard, why don't you give us the TLDR on who you are and what you get up to on a daily basis?
Okay, will do, Charlie. Thanks for having me. I'm Leonard Hope. I'm an American living in Auckland for about 18 months now. I've got a sort of a diverse background. I started my professional life in the computer business. I have a degree in computer engineering. Somehow got sidetracked from that, which had always been my passion, into the legal world. Became a U.S. patent attorney. Practiced as a U.S. patent attorney for the last, I hate to say it out loud, but maybe 25 plus years.
Wow.
Also have been involved with co-founding a couple of startups, which is ultimately what led me to New Zealand. And most recently, I've just completed an MBA at the University of Auckland to hopefully expand the kinds of things that I can work on and help businesses solve problems other than just IP law related issues. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I've got my partner here with me in New Zealand, 3 children, one who lives in the States, getting her master's in San Diego, and then two other children here with us in New Zealand.
Yeah, so we're good. And where did you live in the US when you were there?
So I lived in the southern US most of my life, but most recently when we moved to New Zealand, we were living in the Seattle area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is a little bit like parts of New Zealand in some ways. A lot of, the water and the green and the mountains and so on. So very beautiful.
Very cool. And I guess what led to the decision to move to New Zealand? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to give you this sort of concise version. I co-founded a clean tech startup with a friend, Chris Bean, and through that work, we became acquainted with the Edmund Hillary Fellowship and applied to the EHF as a team back in 2018. We were accepted into the fellowship in 2019, came for our welcome week in Glenorchy, and it was magical in all of the ways that New Zealand can be magical, and just fell in love with the country. We tried to move here in 2020, and of course, like so many people, COVID had a different plan for us. So we kind of regrouped and spent some time in Seattle, and ultimately said, we had a dream to live and raise our kids and work in New Zealand, and we were going to go for it. So yeah, we moved here about 18 months ago. Yeah,
cool. And what's been the biggest takeaway or learning from being in a new country for 18 months?
So it's interesting. I've always, since I was very young, I always had a strong interest in living overseas. But like most Americans, I tended to think of Europe. It's closer, and I think I romanticized it a bit. It's easy to romanticize, but I think the biggest takeaway is moving overseas is hard. New Zealand is culturally very, very similar, obviously, to the U.S. It's also very different too. We've learned in subtle ways. And it's a challenge, even though the language is the same and again, culturally the distance isn't very far. It can be challenging to figure out how to do things and get through the day, and being far away from, friends and family. That said, I have to also mention that, we've found New Zealanders to be wonderful people, very kind, very accommodating. When Chris and I first started coming here for our startup, and people told us this, I don't think we believed it until we actually experienced it, but just the accessibility of the business community here. I've sent many cold emails and LinkedIn messages, and almost without exception, people reply and, are willing to have a cup of coffee with you, which I think is really, really incredible.
Yeah. That's cool. So you trained as an engineer, software engineer. You ended up getting into IP law.
Yep.
There's lots of work to do there, and it's quite popular in the US.
Correct.
And was that because you realised through engineering that there was so much demand there, or?
No, I think it was a little more naive than that. It was a bit of an interesting journey because I was always fascinated with technology as a kid. I was one of those kids that took apart the TV and the radio, and I was just curious about how things worked. Much to my parents' chagrin, I probably didn't put them back together again. Yeah. I had an uncle at the time that was an engineer at Georgia Tech, Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, and he was a bit of a role model for me. So from a young age, I wanted to be an engineer. That's literally all I wanted to do. That was my passion. And so I went through university and got that degree. And somehow at the end of my degree, I just thought, gosh, I don't know. I'm not sure I want to be in the computer lab or behind a screen for my whole career. Ironically, I've been behind a screen for my whole career. But that thought led me to think about, an alternate path. How might I apply my engineering background into something else? I'd taken, almost literally every math class that there was. So I thought of architecture, right? I had a bit of an interest in that. And then somebody suggested patent law as a career. And the notion was that, you take your engineering background and you get a law degree to go along with it, and then you can work with tech companies to help them protect their investment in innovation. And somehow that really interested me. So I applied to law school and spent 3 years getting a law degree. When I got out of law school, the job market for patent lawyers wasn't great. So I spent a couple years working in labor and employment law, and which was very interesting, I thought. But after a couple of years, I thought, I went to law school to be a patent lawyer. I really need to do that. And my timing was perfect because the law was changing in the U.S. a little bit. Software patents were actually kind of fully coming into their own and in focus. And I ended up going to work for a law firm in Atlanta, Georgia, that was one of Microsoft's first outside patent counsel law firms. Right. So that led me to an almost 20-year relationship with Microsoft as outside patent counsel.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And that was where you kind of just cut your teeth and built that, I guess clocked in revenues as a patent lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky to have great clients like Microsoft throughout my career. Like I mentioned, I represented them for almost 20 years as outside patent counsel. Represented Amazon for almost 10 years, eBay, Nintendo, a host of other companies like that. And they're great companies to work for. As you might imagine, they literally have an endless supply of work. If you get their trust and the quality of your work is high enough to keep their trust, they can keep you busy for a long time. Yeah. And they don't have cash flow problems. They pay their bills, which, like every business, it's important that your clients pay your bills. But another part of my practice, though, was working with startups at the complete other end of the spectrum. And in a lot of ways, that was and continues to be maybe the most rewarding part of what I do on a day-to-day basis. If you get another patent for Microsoft or Amazon, it's great. They're happy about that, and they add it to the big stack that they already have. If you get a valuable patent for a small client, a startup, it might be really meaningful and really change the equation for them completely,
right.
Which is really, really satisfying, right? Just really feeling like you're helping being a part of the success of a venture.
Yeah, and were you a partner at a law firm and that's how you did it, and you worked your way up to that point? Like, how did that work?
So a little bit of both. I spent a couple of years, about 6 or 7 years, I guess, working for law firms, became a partner in a prestigious U.S. patent law firm. At some point, though, the economics of the business started changing a little bit. The way that the patent attorneys bill their fees typically in the United States, now I think it's different here in New Zealand, but it's typically a flat fee, so it's not hourly based.
Oh, yeah.
And it becomes harder and harder to do that work at a big firm, right, where they've got high overhead. We always called it marble and mahogany. They've got a lot of fancy, expensive office space, and the clients are pushing the fees down, and it makes your life difficult as a as an attorney. So I decided I felt like I could do a better job myself. So I left the comfort of the big firm and the salary and the benefits and all of this stuff, and rented a really awful, horrible little office in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, and hung out my own shingle.
Right.
And it was just me at the start. And I was lucky enough to have a few people come and join me. I was lucky enough to have a couple clients follow me.
Yeah.
And did that for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I built the firm up from just me to, I think we probably had about nearly 25 people when we actually sold the firm.
Yeah.
About 15 patent attorneys and staff. And through that time, represented that list of clients that I mentioned, Microsoft and others. So I'm particularly proud of that. Microsoft and Amazon and those other companies, they can hire whoever they want. Obviously they've got infinite resources, and for them to hire a little firm like mine says, I think, a lot about what the kind of work we were doing and the kind of relationships that we had and the trust that they placed into us. So yeah, that was my first entrepreneurial experience, I guess. People don't tend to think of professional services.
No, I don't think people even think of partners as being business owners, but they really are.
They really are, yeah. I've reflected on this a lot over the years. A partner in a law firm, particularly in a small law firm, you're literally doing every task there is to be done in the business. You are behind the scenes. You're doing the accounting. You're doing the marketing. You're doing the human resources, hiring and firing. You're doing all of that stuff. And then from a client-facing perspective, you're out there generating new business, you're building relationships, you're delivering work product, managing the work product, and making sure that quality is there, and so on, right? So people don't think of it that way in a lot of cases, but you're 100% right. It's, partners are doing all of that work every single day in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think as well, like New Zealand being such a defragmented, service-based economy, like there are many sole traders and essentially business owners that are doing everything and kind of keeping it all going, right? And they are business owners too, and I think a lot of cases that often it's not deemed or looked at as business ownership, but it is very much so.
It is, and it's and as you suggested, it involves every single aspect of it, right? I mentor some small business owners through Talaga Evergreen Fund, and these are tradies, they're people out there that are starting businesses from scratch. They're working hard every single day, and they face all the challenges that every business owner has. Maybe more, because they're also out there working hard every single day, doing doing labor or whatever it might be. And I have just a massive amount of respect for people like that. It's not easy, So
yeah, cool. What would you say your takeaway is from is there any insight or opportunities in New Zealand that you kind of land here and you've observed? Like, obviously there are all the great parts. It's a really accessible, open community and business community and economic community. What do you think of the dynamics? Where would you think as a kind of economy would benefit to, pivot and adjust? Like, have you kind of noticed any great things and any parts that you think could be more robust?
That's a really hard question. I think the great things come from the collaborative nature of the people here. It's interesting. Somebody commented to me recently. They were comparing the startup community in Silicon Valley. This was an entrepreneur from the States, and they were talking about how everybody's very collaborative there, how everybody helps each other and works together, and they hadn't seen that here. But I disagreed with that. I felt like that wasn't actually the case. I felt like there's a lot of community here and a lot of people working to help one another. I work out of Grid AKL pretty frequently, and I see the community there firsthand, and it's pretty amazing. And I think a lot of that maybe comes from being a smaller country too. So being small isn't always a negative. Your question might be a little bit of my pay grade, because as a foreigner, I'm a little bit hesitant. And I'm hesitant to suggest how the country might improve. I think New Zealand has probably had many foreigners come here over time and tell the country how to do things better, and I don't want to be that guy. But the only suggestion I might have is that I think New Zealand has something unique and special, and I've heard people say this. This is not, of course, my original idea, but I think it needs to embrace what makes it special and not try to be Silicon Valley or something else, right? Like find its own unique, or embrace its own unique attributes and positive qualities and leverage those into the world rather than trying to be Silicon
Or considering them as maybe a weakness.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of thinking that a small market means that. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'd say that there's a lot of collaborative nature, and actually people are relatively open, especially in finance as well, because it's quite a larger part of the market, which surprised me actually. But being a small economy isn't necessarily a negative. But also, we shouldn't think that we can't beat other markets or win other markets just because we are a small kind of island in the middle of the ocean.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So what got you onto the out of law into a clean tech startup? What was that kind of process?
So it was also IP related. A close childhood friend of mine contacted me and said, hey, I've learned of a portfolio of patents that had been foreclosed upon. They were used as collateral for a loan, and they were foreclosed upon by Bank of America. And he said, I'd like you to help me acquire these patents. I'd like to acquire them into a startup company, based on the underlying technology. And so we negotiated with Bank of America. It's a funny story. They wanted something like $500,000 for this family of patents, and we offered them 10, and they took it. So little lesson there. Don't negotiate on your own terms. Don't let the other side drive the range of negotiation. So I helped him acquire the patents. He did a little bit of work on the venture, and then later came back to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about becoming a co-founder with me in this?" It was an interesting clean technology having to do with it's a microturbine that uses excess gas pressure to create power. And there's a lot of solutions out there that capture excess heat to create power, but this one is about capturing pressure. And through some discovery, we're trying to find product market fit. We realized that in the U.S. in particular, and I guess probably worldwide as well, but there are gas distribution networks that use hydraulic valves to control the flow of gas through the network. Every time one of those valves open, it releases a bit of methane, and which is obviously a problem. It's much worse than CO2, for example, for the environment. Well, what we figured out is that we could tap off a little bit of the pressure of that gas line for our turbine, generate some electricity, and then use an electric valve to open and to close and control the flow of gas. So no methane emission. So we the company built a couple prototypes and had a little bit of traction, and unfortunately during COVID though, we needed to raise another round, and hardware is hard enough as it is, and then raising a round in COVID was incredibly difficult. So my partner continues to work on it, but I took a step back after COVID from the venture. But one great thing did come out of it, that through the venture we learned of the Edmund Hillary Fellowship here in New Zealand, which is a group of entrepreneurs and investors from New Zealand and around the world that kind of use New Zealand as a base camp for positive impact throughout the world. And we applied to EHF. We were accepted as a team, and that's really, like I mentioned, kind of what led us to here to New Zealand.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, EHF always seemed like this interesting opportunity, and I think it was really kicking off pre-COVID more so than actually post-COVID. I mean, my sense is actually that, I don't know, I'm speculating. I sometimes speculate. Is that the enthusiasm was higher pre-COVID for EHF than today? It seems like it's dormant almost. I don't know, as an outsider.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. I don't. It's not dormant, but it was definitely higher pre-COVID. I know personally. I had incredibly high expectations for the fellowship and what we might accomplish together, and just like so many other things, though, COVID really took a severe toll on the fellowship. I think there were cohorts that weren't able to come to New Zealand to, be welcomed into the fellowship. They did it virtually, and it just wasn't ideal time. There were lots of fellows like myself that were locked out of New Zealand for a couple of years, and
life moves on, right?
Yeah, I think so. All that said, I still think it's been life-changing for me personally.
I always hear really great things from fellows.
Yeah.
Of the positive experience they've had.
Yeah.
And then as an outsider, you I think there was a lot of excitement in the market too, of people that had done interesting things that were gonna I guess come into the market and save the day.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It seems like you say, from an insular perspective, everyone's really happy with the experience they've had, especially if they've been integrated into the country. Obviously, there were famous. I don't know if it's famous, but famously, obviously, Naval was in the Elite Fellowship. I don't know, but it seems like he's turned off from New Zealand quite a bit.
Yeah.
For a bunch of reasons, I'm guessing. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, right, about momentum. Because I think that's a lesson to momentum.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And it was, and it's tough when you have something that, and ironically, you'd say that maybe COVID could have improved it. But I think it's circumstance, and it did slow it down a bit. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. I mean, just to give you a practical example, I think I mentioned briefly that when we came for our welcome week in Glenorchy, I brought my spouse with me because I really felt like it might be a life-changing sort of experience, and it was. Glenorchy obviously is incredibly beautiful, and there was the Maori presence, which was new to me as an outsider, and we're in a room with just all kinds of incredible people from all over the world doing amazing things. I don't think I fully understood what imposter syndrome was until then. Is
that because of the other people that were there was so renowned for whatever they were working on?
Yeah, just people doing amazing things all over the world, and investor fellows like Naval, that bring a lot of sort of I don't know what the right word
gravitas?
is. Yeah, something to the room, and we were all in. My wife and I, we were, that I remember very clearly. We were in Glenorchy, and we said, we're doing this. We're moving our whole family to New Zealand, and we're gonna commit to the fellowship. We're gonna participate in every way we can. We're gonna help other fellows. We're gonna, we want to make positive impact in whatever way we can make it. And there's that core is still there, of course. But when COVID happened, our circumstance was particularly bad. We had sold our house.
Oh, you'd already sold.
We'd sold our house and put all of our belongings in a shipping container. Before we could actually get on the plane to come to New Zealand, the border was closed. And we spent 18 months working with Immigration New Zealand and EHF to try to get a border exemption. And look, we understand. There were lots of Kiwis that couldn't get into their own country, so it didn't really make sense to let us in. But that's going to impact.
You persevered, right?
Well, we did persevere.
You persevered longer than you've been here now.
Yes,
which says a lot.
We persevered. It took us, almost 5 years to get here. But you're talking about momentum, right? All of that is going to really impact the momentum of everything. The energy that we had and the plans that we had in 2020 were very different than how things were when we finally landed here in 2024. Yeah,
it's amazing demonstration of resilience, though, right? I think.
Well, thank you. I hope so. I've reflected on that a bit, and I hope, for example, my children see it that way. Right? We had a dream. We fell in love with the country. We were bought into the fellowship, and we haven't we've kept it in our sights and haven't given up yet. We're still here, and in fact, you suggested that the fellowship seemed dormant from an outsider's perspective, and I get that. But for example, just this last week we had a great gathering on Waiheke with a handful of fellows, and whenever I'm in those spaces, the kind of conversations that are taking place are really really amazing people doing amazing things and with an amazing outlook on the world and what's possible. So the spark's still there, and
Nice.
you know,
And it only takes a few wins, a little bit of a reignition, and all of a sudden you're back to the races, right? And I think that's another lesson around business, resilience, perseverance is also that you know, inevitably in things you will lose momentum, and maybe that will never be regained, but you do always have the opportunity to respark that fire, and that goes for everything, relationships, everything, right?
And there are so many fellows here in New Zealand just doing amazing things. I mean, I see them in my LinkedIn feed every single day, and it's really impressive what they're doing. I don't think it gets as much publicity necessarily as being connected to EHF. So maybe that's why from an outsider's perspective, you don't see it so much, but they're definitely out there and they're doing really, really cool stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I guess like you've been here 18 months, you've lived a full life prior to that and done some good work, some big work that I think a lot of people here wouldn't be able to necessarily achieve because we just don't have the access to juggernauts like Microsoft and Amazon that to work on, although we have our own equivalents.
Sure. Yeah.
But you're here in a new country, you've been here 18 months getting established. Like, what does success look like for you in the next 5 years in being here?
That's a really good question. Like I mentioned at the outset, I've recently completed an MBA at the University of Auckland, which is another journey in and of itself, a really positive one. I've been practicing patent law for a long time, and I enjoy that work. But it dawned on me a few years ago, well, I guess around the time I was working on the clean tech startup, that I was interested in doing a lot of other things as well, and not just focusing on intellectual property law. And in fact, when I did the startup, my plan was that if we were to get some real traction, that I would pivot full time into the startup and see if we could ride a rocket ship somewhere. And so I've been working on a bit of a pivot since about that time. The MBA is part of that pivot. And like I mentioned, I finished it at the end of the year last year. And so now I'm doing a lot of coffees, which is, I guess, what people do in New Zealand when they're trying to make a change. Talking to a lot of people about a lot of different opportunities where I might, I don't want to leave my skill set behind.
It's a huge edge, right?
I hope so. We'll see. But opportunities where I can leverage those skills, but maybe add value in different ways.
So not be tied to, I'm this square thing.
Exactly.
I'm more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you use that metaphor because I've used it recently myself, that I'm in a bit of a square box as sort of the patent attorney, and I'm finding it's a little bit challenging to escape from that. You're also talking about persistence a moment ago. It takes a bit of persistence to try to escape that box and let people know that you're a whole lot more than that, and that maybe you can add value in different ways than are immediately obvious from your traditional career title.
Totally. I guess it's probably though about leading with your best, like old Bruce Lee kind of quote of, I don't fear the man that's practiced 10,000 moves, but the man that's practiced one move 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the entry point, right? But then, like you say, there's wisdom and insight that you'd have got from working at Microsoft, doing the Amazon stuff, working in a very different and litigious country.
Yeah.
That actually, for a lot of Kiwi companies, especially in hard tech, right, where there's actually a huge market of hard tech startups that desperately need more resources, more help, and have to come up against well-funded legal systems that don't just extend to New Zealand, but they're global.
Correct.
And then beyond that, obviously, there's all the other issues that come with it. And then obviously in your clean tech startup experience, all the challenges that come from actually being an operator in one of those businesses, and they're so capital intensive.
Yes.
Of course, we are moving into a world where, the capital structure is being challenged a little bit more. And I think that's a good thing, right? And I don't think that means that venture is dead or whatever that looks like, right? But definitely means that the posturing of capital is changing before our eyes, which is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs.
I agree 100%.
It is a challenge to how we think about capital, productivity, and output for sure.
Yeah.
And it's going to create a lot more competitive tension for capital, because capital or knowledge or a skill set may not be one thing now.
Correct.
I was watching an interview from Mark Andreessen the other day, and he was talking about how it's those that are technically astute but have the ability to put on different hats and execute now, because to a large degree, knowledge and intellect has been democratized.
It has, yeah.
So we live in this brave new world, and what does that mean for us as individuals? What does that mean for our kids? I think that's something that all parents think about almost every day.
I literally think about it every single day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And my son just started intermediate, right? My eldest, and got 3. And I'm like, I can remember vividly that day that I started year 7. And am I being I think this all the time, am I being lazy by leaving him in the status quo institute?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge I give myself regularly.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, I would be I'd be being disingenuous to myself, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't actually go through a academic pathway to get to where I am today.
Yeah.
So I know that it's possible without it as well.
Yeah.
So it's something I think about a lot.
I do as well. Being a parent is maybe the hardest job that I have, and I suspect it is for you as well. And I think the world we live in, as you suggest, makes it just that much harder. I'll give you a couple of examples. My son last year, he probably won't like to know that I mentioned this on the podcast, but his teacher, he's in year 12 this year. So
right.
His teacher had told them no AI on an assignment, and I learned that he and a mate had been using AI to do the assignment, and I got onto him about it a little bit, but at the same time, as you reflected, I was thinking, in the future,
what are we teaching? Yeah, what are we demonstrating?
Are we demonstrating that you shouldn't use it or you should use it? And I don't know the answer to that question today, right? It's hard. But it's a conundrum, right? Every single day, the world is changing fast. And so should we be teaching our children to do it the old fashioned way, or should we be teaching them to do it the new way? Maybe a little bit of both. I don't know, but it's hard.
I think it's changed dramatically, right, over the last couple of years, especially as the technology has improved and the creativity in our minds has expanded to what we can do.
Yeah.
The possibilities have opened up, and I think there's a lot of confidence that's been gained.
Yeah.
And I think that being an engineer and being technical was always this kind of like you were a bit of a magician.
Yeah.
And now the veil has come off and everyone's like, whoa.
Yeah.
What? Now I can be that magician, right?
Yeah.
Without the work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, right? It's like you can get an output from AI. And I was talking about this before AI became a thing, right? And I was talking about it in the context of consuming content, actually. So, do I want to be the sort of person that watches a 15-second video and then gains a very strong view? Or do I want to be the sort of person that actually then goes and watches that, but then goes and watches an hour-long podcast and really tries to work out from first principles what's going on?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's been exacerbated by AI, because it's like, well, we can get... a big problem for our mental health, and I've actually had a few mental health specialists on the podcast, is that it's too easy.
Yeah.
We get positive feedback loops in life.
Yeah.
And I'm specifically thinking games like Roblox and others that are doing a pretty bad job of basically creating dopamine gremlins in the form of kids. Yeah. But it isn't exclusive to kids. It's all of us. I know that there's a massive user experience change from 2017 to today. In 2017, I know and I remember it wasn't always about using your phone all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And less than 10 years later, it's hugely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
It's just. It's
wild. it's it's a conundrum that because the tools are powerful and it does democratize, access to technology. People without any technical skills now in every field are building interesting applications, which I think is amazing. But at the same time, I also think that there's a potential for becoming incredibly accustomed to the cognitive offload that you were describing.
Yeah.
So in my world, in the IP world, when I meet with a client and I learn their technology, historically, you have to spend a lot of time, if it really is a complex technology, a lot of time learning and digging deep and really understanding it inside and out, right? And that's something that it takes deep thought and it takes hard work and it takes time. Mm-hmm. That's what's necessary, has been necessary historically to build patents and build an IP strategy for them that makes, that's valuable and that makes sense. Well, today we have tools where you can completely offload that cognitive activity, right? You can literally drop, the document they send you into ChatGPT and it will write what appears to be a pretty good patent application. Mm-hmm. And it's a slippery slope, right? Because working your brain really hard is like any other exercise. It can be difficult and it can be tiring. And so I think it's hard, and I think it's hard for people to resist, right? It's, like you were suggesting, it's so easy. It's too easy. And you don't get the benefit out of it. And you don't get I don't think you get the kind of insight that you would if you had put in the hard yards and done it yourself, So I don't want to sound like a Luddite because I use these tools daily in my work and I build interesting things with AI. And I know lots of people that are doing that, but I think we have to remain cognizant of the challenges that come along with it and resist the urge to continually offload our that valuable cognitive effort that we put in on different topics.
Yeah, I mean, I do, and I still solve a lot of problems myself. But I find even now I'm like, have I just taken a little bit longer to figure this out just because I'm used to using a tool?
Yeah.
Like, does getting started become something that we are like, hey, we're gonna actually pre-program everything all our starting points?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And what does that mean to use tools that may then put us in a position? It's like offloading. Let's say starting a document. An application from a LLM. Yeah. Is it problematic long term to start the document through AI?
I think it is.
And do I get lazy and do I not check things because I've received the dopamine, the output too easily?
Yeah, I think it is, at least with respect to the IP work I do. And my thought on that is that if I ask AI to do the first bit of work, my thought process is prejudice, right? And I can't unring that bell. I don't know what I might have come up with myself once I've seen the AI output, because you immediately say, you're completely biased. You say, oh, that looks pretty good. But so who knows, right? So actually my personal practice is to not do that. I want to take a shot at it myself, to do some of the hard thinking and really see what I would come up with. And then, of course, as a tool, it can help you smooth things out. And one of my favorite classes in the MBA was an innovation paper. And we had to, do a design innovation process and come up with an actual, working product if you could. And mine was about authenticity in AI, right? If I just offloading everything to the AI, I'm going to lose my authentic voice. I'm going to lose who I am and the way I write and communicate with others.
And writing is important to do yourself.
It is.
Because it helps you, even if no one reads it, and I write. Depends on how inspired I'm feeling or if I think it's worth getting it out, but I try to write at least one memo a year, but up to maybe 3 or 4, depending on the year and how active the world is. And I've always taken the Howard Marks approach of, actually, I'm going to write this for myself. and I'm going to write this because I need to get my thoughts out in a concise, cohesive way. And that practice of doing that has really transformed how I think about the world and my ability to just get those thoughts out in a constructive way.
I think there's research that shows that writing is an important part of thinking, as you suggest. It's getting words on paper, even if they're rough and they're unorganized and they don't flow, but it's part of the process. I actually try to do a short journal entry every single day if I can, just for that exact reason, because I think it helps me sort through the things that are that are going on in my life, the challenges, the goals, the things I'm trying to accomplish, in a way that I can't do if I don't actually write it down. It's just in my mind.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, what would you say your biggest challenge has been over the last couple of years in this very changing world? Like you say, things have changed. There's a lot more noise out there. It's harder to gain signal.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. One personal challenge for me, you mentioned sort of mental health issues earlier, and in this turbulent world we live in, I've actually had to take a sort of a social media and news break, because I find it can be kind of overwhelming, with everything that's going on, particularly in the U.S. these days. And you can't avoid it, but it it does help me to take it in small doses. Yeah.
So like that whole putting the cup down thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wear other people's feelings and energy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you have, it's like you're wearing a coat of other people's expectations or other people's angst.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's very easy because if you're emotionally attached to something or an environment or something like that, you can't help but feel that pressure or feel that energy in some sense. So sometimes it's the right thing to do to take a step back, and that could be in a relationship. Sure. And it's a relationship with, information that's being forced upon you and forced upon your neurons.
Yeah.
And you actually, to a degree, we have the ability to control it, but it's not trivial, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, well, you just think differently, right? Oh, just don't be as stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't let your brain take you down a rabbit hole when you read that piece of media, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense. Ugh.
Well, and not only that, social media is so perfectly designed to keep us engaged, and you find yourself sometimes just doing doom scrolling and so on, and then you realize, wait a minute, this isn't a positive thing for me. We were back in the States over Christmas, and I looked around at one point, and literally in a large group of people, every single person was sitting there going like this on TikTok or Instagram, and when you take a step back, it's kind of disturbing in a way. It's
I mean, like, my algorithm obviously is completely well programmed for me.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of jiu-jitsu content and a lot of motivational speeches from people that I really respect and are really smart.
Yeah.
But after the second video, am I getting anything out of it anymore?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, I my interactions have been similar, but I find myself still scrolling, because again, it's dialed in to give you that tiny little dopamine hit, every time.
I'm not a better entrepreneur because I've watched 6 of these videos. I'm actually probably just 10 minutes late for something.
Yeah. One of my sort of big New Year's resolution for this year was to spend my entertainment time in a higher quality way than scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. It's working pretty well so far, but we'll see how it goes.
Passive engagement with content, right? And that's quite an interesting thing. You don't need to give too much feedback,
right? Yeah.
Right. It's given to you.
Yeah.
You don't even have to search for it now.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh no.
It finds you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
And I hope to stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.